Welcome to our presentation on urban design, the architecture of urban space, presented by Group 3. We completed this project as a small 3-person team. As part of our presentation, we will run through our literature studies, our site, strategies and objectives, a precedent analysis, our design, as well as a short critical reflection. As part of our study, we engaged with 3 pieces of literature: City Building 9 Planning Principles for the 21st Century by John Kraken, A Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander, and Urban Acupuncture by James Lerner.
A pattern language is about the networks that create everyday life, from larger regional frameworks down to the finer details of rooms. One of the first principles we got out of the book was the idea of a network of paths, a series of pedestrian paths that connect different parts of the city to form one major pedestrian system with many entrances and openings off of it. The idea of the promenade also resonated with our project as we are trying to reinforce a movement corridor. For a promenade to function, it needs a clear goal or destination. There needs to be a reason to walk down the path. Along the promenade, there needs to be places that attract people by themselves. People are drawn to concentrations of other people and don't want to walk far between these places of activity. Major points should be no more than 10 minutes walk away from each other. These activity nodes need to draw together major parts in the community, and facilities should be grouped together according to their symbiotic relationship to ensure a lively space. Any point that is more than 50 meters away from activity becomes unsavory and unused. To keep the activity throughout our promenade, we included staying places of different qualities. There are many ways to create these conditions for staying. This includes a widening of paths, walls to lean on, stairs, benches and niches for sitting, as well as opening of street fronts. Healthy urban environments have areas where life is concentrated, others where it is slow, and others in between. People have different needs for their daily lives, and it is important to create a variety of spaces to cater to a diversity of people. This is achieved through creating a hierarchy of spaces and pathways. The hierarchy of spaces is needed to support the different levels of social activity that takes place on a daily basis.
John Cricken outlines 9 planning principles for city building. Sustainability speaks to the conservation of irreplaceable land through continuous vegetation and connecting that to natural systems, looking at land use management and increasing the carrying capacity of LC. Open space was approached the same way, but in terms of protecting the catchment area and extending the natural habitat, touching on conservation and beautification. Compatibility. Creating landmarks that transition to human scale along a movement corridor helps define neighborhoods through building bulk, focusing on the contextual character of the area. Identity is about referencing existing buildings, having shaded porches and shared tones as architectural characteristics, speaking to identity by climate and historical preservation. Adaptability. Making blocks smaller with service lanes, and consolidating parcels with flexible building types that feed their streets, touching on street address identity and value enhancements. Incentives. The assembling of parcels of land for densification and improving access to neighborhoods, which also applies to adaptability. Accessibility. To create walkable multi-use blocks with movement corridors on neighborhood edges, protecting pedestrian comfort while creating concentrated destinations. Diversity, which talks about conserving heritage and infilling new mixed uses into the existing urban fabric based on frequency of visits. This touches on managing settlement and keeping activities in proximity to one another. Density is about improving access to transport nodes and support services, focusing on transit-oriented development and amenities.
As part of Learner's urban design principles, we picked up specifically on the ideas of aquapuncture, arborescence, and ramlas and galleries. We also took some inspiration from his ideas on the 24-hour city created by mixed use, continuity in the urban landscape, squares and monuments, good urban cholesterol, markets and street fairs, because people want to see people, as well as wayfinding. So, how do you find someone in your city? Our project site consists of two city blocks between University of Pretoria's main campus and its Hillcrest Sports Campus. The reason why this specific site was selected is it has undergone minimal urban change in recent years, yet may still change in the near future, making it the ideal site to develop as a city campus connecting both parts of the existing campus. This can be reduced to a simple party showing the relationship between the site and its immediate context. As part of our urban design framework, we looked into five strategies: promenades and increased pedestrianization, degrees of publicness and how this influences the nature of space, green corridors and naturalization, nodes and networks, developing connections within our site, spatial diversity and definition, the creation of place. From that, we set out four objectives for our urban intervention. The first being spatial diversity of both topology and typology. Secondly, an extension of natural systems. The third being the facilitation of a walkable neighborhood. And lastly, it would be to create ramblas and galleries for people to naturally flow through. And to be more specific regarding diversity and spatial richness, we first unpacked how different topologies and their arrangement create diversity. We've identified three topologies: built form, planting and landscaping, and interstitial space. Each topology, when manipulated three-dimensionally from an ordered grid system, starts changing spatial relationships, becoming more diverse the more change takes place.
For our precedent, we analyzed La Rambla, a lively promenade flowing through the heart of old Barcelona, Spain. The promenade has a start and end, flowing from the coast to the new urban fabric of Barcelona. It serves as a major movement corridor with more activity nodes in between the major transport hubs. As you move along La Rambla, the spaces constantly change with a multitude of activities supported along it. There are several major places with their entrances on La Rambla. They are slightly hidden, creating a sense of curiosity. These places are supported by the activity of La Rambla. Areas are well lit at night, allowing for 24-hour activity with a high level of mixed use throughout the site. Looking at the fabric of La Rambla, there are multiple crossings of networks and spaces. There is a hierarchy of spaces. Major crossing points are supported by public squares by courtyards, and courtyards by the buildings. There is a larger network of paths that flow into each other. Smaller paths flow into bigger ones and connect to eventually flow into the main walkway of La Rambla. Combining the hierarchy of space with the hierarchy of movement shows the crossing of paths and the intertwining of space. This creates the degrees of publicness. What is left is only the built form. This is a size comparison with the city blocks in Hatfield to understand the relative scale. Coming back to our site, we have our two blocks in Hatfield. Public space is reduced to the areas next to streets. The entire fabric of the city is dictated by the street grid. This leaves the public in the vehicular realm. Buildings become isolated from each other, existing with little interaction to its context. This results in large, undefined open spaces that are not publicly accessible and not used to its fullest potential privately. Overlaying La Rambla on our context gives a sense of scale.
With a developed conceptual urban framework and having understood our precedent, we began the process of sketching out a plan, developing our design through a series of layering and iteration.
Looking at how spaces define our site, starting with the existing network of Hatfield, the city vehicular roads. We added a promenade that runs from Jan Schober to Hillcrest campus, creating a pedestrian movement corridor. Service streets further divides the big city blocks and create heavily pedestrianized roads with controlled access for motor vehicles. Along the promenade we have a series of activity nodes, with our main points being at the start and at the end. Hillcrest Campus acts as our destination. There are smaller public spaces that maintains activity through the promenade. These spaces are served by smaller communal areas and buildings connecting to these spaces. There is a network of paths that connect these different spaces, from main routes directly off the promenade to quiet pathways that connect smaller squares. Spaces of different qualities that attract different people are spread through the site, while allowing for a dominant movement pattern.
Now, delving into the design development in reverse, we have our degrees of publicness, bare of features but rich in dynamics. Topography, the connecting corridors opening buildings to interrelation. Secondary movement paths, creating subtle interaction through pockets of quiet space tucked between buildings. Primary movement paths, introducing more open paths for movement from contemplative to recreational spaces. Idle spaces, relating buildings through gathering places off of the main movement corridor. Active space, public amenities like community pools, skateboard parks, and informal markets keep interest between nodes as signs of life. Activity nodes, as destinations for development to expand from and movement to flow towards. Edge movement paths, improving ease of movement through access to multiple modes of transport and the prioritization of pedestrian comfort with wider sidewalks and bicycle lanes. Internal space, providing refuge from the urban landscape in the form of private courtyards for tenants. Service lanes, used to split blocks in half, improving access for delivery and emergency vehicles while providing more street identity for neighborhoods. The promenade, which connects a series of activity nodes through pedestrianization, creating the structure for diverse density along a block-defining path. Transport corridors, allowing for access to transport stations at the start and end of the promenade, encouraging walkability through movement corridors along it. As the built form takes shape, the interrelation becomes clearer, introducing hierarchy of spaces and movement paths which are guided by typology and topography defines the degrees of publicness. The built form therefore defines public space through inclusion or exclusion, and the function of these built forms relate to the carrying capacity of the area and a rational framework of adaptability.
Our design intends to allow people of all ages and all backgrounds to actively engage with public space, facilitating outdoor commute through walking and cycling. Extending natural systems and creating more green space should allow for a healthy and comfortable experience. A sense of curiosity is created with natural parts of movement. Diversity starts giving place its unique identity. In between spaces that would have otherwise become neglected or closed off to the public become active enclosure. This is done through a network of public facilities weaving through the created urban fabric. This also creates the opportunity for people to see other people, as well as allows for community to grow. Natural systems start integrating with architecture and infrastructure. Features such as retention ponds become part of public landscape, and vertical farms and green walls become part of the urban everyday. Mixed use becomes three-dimensional, with diversity taking place vertically. Different programs start arranging themselves within the same building. This starts to become the 24-hour city, with spaces being activated at all times of the day as a result of mixed use. People become part of the landscape, actively engaging with it, with interaction with natural systems being encouraged. Natural features such as the river become part of the architecture and part of community activity. As part of our design, we also propose a manipulation of traffic flow. Jan Choba Street is to include 4 lanes of two-way vehicular traffic with the addition of a raised pedestrian crossing flowing out from our intervention as well as street-side parking. Prospect Street is reduced to a one-way road consisting of 2 lanes for vehicular traffic and the sidewalk widened to allow for a bike lane. South Street is also reduced to a one-way road consisting of 2 lanes for vehicular traffic and the sidewalk widened to allow for a bike lane. Richard Street becomes a one-way road with 2 lanes of vehicular traffic integrated with a raised pedestrian crossing as a continuation of the internal pathways. We propose densification through a manipulation of the urban topography. This is something that we chose to tackle through a mass model. Once we had understood our massing, we could start carving this rambla through our site. Our massing maquette shows that by densifying the site through a manipulation in the urban topography, we were able to facilitate more green space at ground level. Upon reflecting on our design, we find strength in the diversity of the urban fabric as a result of the variety of space. Integration of the design with its immediate context strengthened the developed networks. The design also successfully introduces a pedestrian-oriented public movement corridor linking the 2 campuses. There is opportunity to quantify and map the impact of our proposal in order to achieve a more accurate comparison between existing and proposed, possibly including area calculations and stormwater management analysis. To take our design further, the next step would be to zoom into our identified topologies, resolving and understanding the effect of their manipulation at a more intimate scale. An identified threat is that we cannot fully control how people choose to interact with the space, and whether we can attain the required density to maintain activity. Therefore, we acknowledge that adaptability will be key in maintaining continuity and life.